Friday practice in Budapest is over and the fastest driver of the day was Lando Norris in the McLaren, as McLaren and Ferrari looked like the closest competition to Red Bull this weekend. But what did we learn? Well, in today's video, I'm going to be doing a data analysis from practice. If you enjoyed the video, then please hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now, let's get into the video. As usual, I'll be talking about the top teams later on, which is Mercedes, McLaren, Ferrari and Red Bull, so stick around for that. Yep, Friday practice is over and we got to see the cars tackle the Budapest circuit. Even though the cars tend to run maximum downforce levels, we still saw plenty of mistakes as they were losing the car. Most notably was Charles Leclerc, who crashed and brought out a red flag, and then Zhou Guanyu got into a bit of a spin as well. As usual with Budapest, we saw plenty of circuit evolution between the two sessions, and to show that, I've brought up the fastest lap from FP1, which was set by Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, and also the fastest lap from FP2 set by Lando Norris, so we can see the difference. And when we look at these two laps, one thing that surprises me is that actually between them, the top speed of the cars is actually in the favour of Sainz from FP1. Usually between FP1 and FP2, we typically see a large increase in top speed. This is not the case here, as Carlos Sainz actually had a higher top speed in FP1, reaching 314 km per hour, compared to Norris, who reached a top speed of 309 km per hour in FP2. One thing that is clear though is that the circuit conditions are much better in FP2, and you can see that as Norris is able to attack the track much more, and you can see that here how Norris carries much more speed at the apex. For example, here at the tight chicane, Norris in FP2 is able to carry a minimum apex speed of 109 km per hour, whereas Sainz in FP1 was only able to carry about 100 km per hour. Also at the twisty section just after the chicane, you can really see how Norris just has more grip and is able to carry more speed through these corners, and through this section alone he gains about 0.3 of a second. Also, towards the end of the lap, you can see how Norris is able to brake later than Sainz. There are a couple of reasons for this. The first reason is that he has more grip with the circuit being in a better condition, but I also anticipate that the tyres are hanging on better as well, as Budapest is brutal on the tyres. So as the sessions wear on, expect tyre life to improve as the circuit comes more towards the drivers. Altogether though, this led to a lap time improvement of 1 second between the two sessions. So we've seen how the times improve from session to session, but what about the top speed that the teams were able to reach? And what can we see here? Well, when we look at these top speeds, it definitely looks as though McLaren might be running a little bit more downforce than the competition, as they were the slowest car in a straight line. It might also explain why they were so good in the corners. Haas, on the other hand, as we've become somewhat used to, were the fastest cars in a straight line, but they still had pretty good performance today. Red Bull were surprisingly low down the order when it came to straight line performance, and the fastest driver in a straight line was Sergio Perez, who didn't have the same upgrades as Max Verstappen. So the question is then, in the midfield, what teams were looking good today? Well, one team that was looking good in the midfield was once again Haas, as Kevin Magnussen was all the way up in 6th place, as once again it looks like the latest set of upgrades are delivering great performance for the Haas team. Over one lap they are looking very strong, but there is currently some concerns for me when it comes to the longer runs, as when you compare the race runs of Magnussen, Ricciardo and Albon, you can see that the one lap pace may be very strong, but the long runs are not as strong. Haas, at least right now, drop off quicker than the midfield cars around them. This could be down to the extreme levels of heat being brought to this circuit this weekend with the weather, meaning that tyre wear is going to be more of a factor this weekend than we have seen at any other point this year. This is going to be an area of improvement that they need to do overnight. Otherwise, it could be a bit of a 2023 type race for them, where they qualify well and then drop back a little bit during the race. I just want to say that if you are enjoying the video so far, then I would really appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe for more F1 content. Now though, let's get back to the video and let's talk about Mercedes. For Mercedes, they are currently a little bit more adrift from the top 3 teams ahead of them this weekend than what we had seen previously in Silverstone, as George Russell was in 5th place and Lewis was in 7th, which doesn't sound too bad. However, Russell himself was half a second away from Norris's fastest time of the day. The Mercedes car is still looking good, especially in race trim, and you can see that when you look at the longer runs of Russell and compare it to Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari, who seem to be their main rivals at the moment. You can see that Mercedes looked to be a little bit faster, but they couldn't hold the pace for as long when the tyre wear started to kick in, as it looks like once again tyre wear is a little bit heavier for Mercedes compared to Ferrari. But let's now compare Russell's fastest lap to that of Norris, so we can see where the differences were. And when you look at these two laps, you can see that a lot of the lap is made up early on, as Norris in the McLaren is able to get great traction out of the early corners around the lap. As the lap unfolds though, it becomes clear that Norris is also able to brake later than Russell, probably indicating that Norris has actually been able to keep the tyres alive a little bit better than George Russell has over the lap. And that means that Norris will still have a little bit more performance left to give. For Mercedes, it looks as though this weekend they might be the fourth fastest team, as the warmer temperatures could be affecting them a little bit more than their rivals. For McLaren, today was a very solid start for Lando Norris as he topped the timing sheets in FP2, and he looks like he is on a bit of a mission for victory as a Silverstone race win slipped away. Teammate Oscar Piastri finished way down in 13th place and was 0.8 of a second away from Norris as he made a mistake on his lap. Piastri looks like he could be struggling a little bit more this weekend, and you can see that when you look at the longer runs from FP2, but you can also see it when you look at his one lap pace. Let's now compare the two fastest laps, and when you look at these two laps, you can see that there is a massive difference between the two teammates, especially when we get towards the end of the lap. Firstly, on the exit of turn 2 here, you can see that Norris gets fantastic traction on the exit and carries that advantage all the way up the hill. Then through the chicane, Norris again gets to power sooner than Piastri, and then at the end of the twisty section, it looks like Piastri has completely cooked his tyres because he just cannot carry the same amount of speed as his teammates, and through the last 3 corners alone, Piastri loses 0.4 of a second, showing how he possibly did overheat the tyres and lose performance, as well as of course making a mistake. For McLaren, there is definitely potential then that they could be the fastest car, but with Piastri once again needing to make sure he needs to look after the tyres, that could be the thing that stops them from getting both cars on the podium this weekend. If he can look after the tyres, then there is no reason why McLaren are not in a fantastic position this weekend. For Ferrari, the run of bad luck since his win in Monaco continues for Charles Leclerc, as an early trip into the barriers ended his day in FP2, which will cost Ferrari some very valuable data for the longer runs. He caught the curb and it spat him off into the wall. Teammate Carlos Sainz, however, had a much better day, topping FP1, and then in FP2 he was third fastest. Ferrari are in a much better position this weekend, as I said when I did my preview and predictions. This is a circuit that will suit them nicely. Leclerc throwing it into the wall though will not be helping their chances at all. And in FP3, he needs to make sure he can get as much running done as he possibly can, so they are in the best possible position for the Grand Prix to take the fight to Red Bull and McLaren, because there is very good chance that they could beat them this weekend. And finally, for Red Bull, they brought essentially 2 different cars. One upgraded car for Max Verstappen, and Sergio Perez had the old spec of car, and between them in FP2, there was only a difference of 0.2 of a second in the favour of Verstappen. However, it has to be said, this is actually a lot closer than what we usually see, maybe indicating that the new upgrades still require a little bit of work and optimising. When you look at the 2 laps, they are actually somewhat similar, but Verstappen at the top of the hill is able to carry a lot more speed than Perez, and he also does that at the fiddly corners as well just after the chicane, showing how he does have a decent balance with the Red Bull. Perez though is a little bit faster through that tight chicane. Tomorrow in qualifying, I expect that we are going to see a strong fight for pole position between Red Bull, Ferrari and McLaren. So with that in mind then, what are my top 5 predictions for the Hungarian Grand Prix when it comes to qualifying? Well, in P5 I'm going to go for Oscar Piastri in the McLaren, P4 will be Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, P3 will be Carlos Sainz, P2 will be Max Verstappen in the Red Bull, and I'm going to go for a Lando Norris pole position. But that is what I think. The question is, what do you guys think will happen in qualifying? In the comment section down below, please do let me know. And as always, comment, leave a like, and subscribe for more F1 content. Thank you all so much for watching.